Um, yeah, do you want to get started?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
really excited about that
This
this
book.
book. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Good. Okay.
All right. So, uh, hey Alex.
Hey Ben, how's it
Uh,
going?
so,
Oh,
good? No, no, it's fine. We just fake pretend saying hello.
yeah.
We've already said
I
hello.
could tell it was sincere though.
Yeah. That's experience, I'm getting better and better at fake greeting you.
Oh, so you didn't mean
Uh,
it. Okay.
no, not at all. So yeah, about today's book. So we didn't really talk that much in advance, but um, I wrote a couple of preparatory notes about the book. Um, I don't know, how do you want to go about it? Maybe we can talk about the author, the art movement, all that kind of thing. Because we
Yeah, we can
talked
do that.
uh, last time we were with each other, we talked about postmodernism quite a bit. And then you brought up Robbe-Grillet. So actually, you're the one who wanted to read this book, to suggest that you suggested this book. So why did you want to read that? And yeah, let's try to remember what we were saying about the nouveau roman, postmodernism, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it came back into my head recently because I read an article by Gerard Jeanette about uh Alain Robbe-Grillet. For what reason, I'm not sure, but he has a book of essays called Figure, and I was reading through parts of it. And there was um, an essay that talks about all of Rob Grillet's work up through like 1970 or something. Um,
What's the name of it?
it's called Le Vertige
Oh yeah,
de
fix. Because I have it
Le
in
Vertige
the
Fixe.
yeah
Oh, is it
wait
the
yeah, Vertige fixé. No,
yeah?
it's at
Um,
the end. I have this version of the book, and at the end there is a couple of writings by Robbe-Grillet. There's an extract as well if we have time. There's an extract I want to talk about. But
sure.
yeah, I actually read the essay, so and I was like, maybe that's the same thing. I don't know.
No, I think it is. But it's also my dissertation. I'm looking at um, one of the novels that's part of my dissertation is called Le Berger Extravagant, or the anti-roman.
Yeah,
So the anti-novel is sort of it's a riff on Don Quixote, uh, but it's also in a part of a tradition, that extends up through like, the new novel, where the novel is always defined by, negating previous forms of the novel, or like,
yeah,
uh, and Rob Gray obviously is kind of the figure de proue, like the main figure of that movement. But yeah, so I was just kind of interested generally in exploring that tendency um, over time.
yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the image that Robbe-Grillet always had to me. I like I've been. It's actually the kind of writer that I never really liked, but I never read. It's just this his public figure, his image, or whatever people say around him, and sometimes it's what people say or used to say, or what even he himself used to say about what he was doing, what he was trying to convey, and especially how he was trying to portray and to show his work. So I always thought, it's this kind of like bullshit artistic, a little too complicated or convoluted and that kind of thing. But I don't know. Lately, I've been really interested in psychological prose and descriptions and characters being stuck in their own heads and thinking and trying to look at reality and trying to make sense of what they are seeing and what is what their relationship to the world is. So like a few years ago, I think I read that was when we were together, in that bookshop in Geneva. I bought two books, and one of them was Jin by Alain Robbe-Grillet, and
Like
I read that.
DJINN.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and
Yeah, I do remember that.
I don't know why I bought that, but it seemed short, and I was like, I'm gonna get a specific, I'm gonna get like a concrete idea of what this guy is doing, and it kind of blew my mind, even though I didn't understand very much out of it. But it did blew my mind, and it stuck with me. There's some scenes, some like convolution and stuff like that. So then, I was that changed my opinion of him and got me more interested. And then once I came across this book, Dans le Labyrinthe, and I bought it in Paris, I think. Um, and because Dans le Labyrinthe, if you like books, you're drawn to a title like that.
Yeah.
And and then I read the avertissement. There's the warning, the forewords or something like that. And then he talks about the book and he says blah blah blah. I mean, I kind of want to talk about that later. But then I
Well,
didn't read
because
the
in
book.
your version, so there's an introduction by the author, and then
It's
there's like a postface by Gerard Jeanette. Is that it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I just
Because
have
in your
the
version, there's no oh yeah. Oh, okay. You got the OG one. I have
well, I
that.
mean it's like a reprint, but
Yeah.
it's the
No,
Edition
yeah, I
de
have the
Minuit.
poche.
Okay.
And mine was it's kind of old. I don't know when it was published, but yeah, all the all the pages got ripped off.
Yeah, I hope
So
we can put this video up,
yeah.
This is a very visual episode.
Oh yeah, by the way, I didn't tell you I started an Instagram, La Bibliothèque Franglaise.
Oh, excellent. Awesome.
And yeah, I'll just do you even have Instagram?
I'll get one. I'll get one. I
You don't have to. I can give you the login information and maybe you can log in your phone. I assume we can be logged in two different phones.
maybe, yeah, we can try that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to stay off grid.
Well, I don't know. I don't think I'll get sucked in. I don't think I'll get sucked in. I'll try it
Yeah.
in that other labyrinth.
Yeah, I can't really picture you getting sucked in that. And yeah, anyway, no, this book really really drawn me to it, and I was looking
Just by the
for an
title.
opportunity to, yeah, just the title, and what I read from Robbe-Grillet was seemed interesting. I kind of like that sort of psychological, complicated things. And then to get myself in the mood of um, of reading it, I listened to a couple of shows, in France Culture about Robbe-Grillet, and it reminded me how everything. A lot of people said that everything in his books are too. I think it's Roland Barthes, who called his style the eye camera. It's very objective. What do you think of this objectivity? Because to me, it seemed more psychological than it was objective.
Um, I think that's kind of part of what um, Gerard Jeanette kind of gets at this idea in that article, I think, because even Robbe-Grillet, like throughout his career, he started out in his like critical works denouncing subjectivity in the novel and
Hmm.
uh 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 wanting to favorize like a more objective, like visual, superficial kind of representation of the world, and then progressively that articulated itself through like a very interior and subjective like viewpoint. Because I mean, when I'm reading like dans le labyrinthe, like it seems very, there are parts of it where you could say that it's very dreamlike or psychological, kind of like a, you know, a David Lynch film or something. But there's also part of it that is very like photographic. All of the descriptions of like objects and places are very like geometrical,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
and talking, yeah, really in geometrical, almost like mathematical terms, and also constantly kind of questioning the viewpoint of the narrator, because often we think we're looking at through someone's eyes, and then actually we're describing a painting or like a
Mm.
play, and it's like a representation
Yeah.
within the representation or something. And so there's this play with like perspective and objectivity, but I feel like, yeah, I think it's always like playing with the
The assumption of
the
what you're looking at.
uncertainty of those two poles, I guess.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you said the keyword like geometrical.
yeah.
Um, I that reminds me that I wanted to start with talking about Robbe-Grillet's life, but doesn't really matter. I think the one point that is interesting though is that he had a scientific background. I think it was some kind of a geometre, so like a guy or geographer or something like that.
Okay.
And so yeah,
Like
because
that was like he went to school for that, or
yeah, or even started his career as something like that.
okay.
Just like Welbeck, the I heard or saw something like that. But I think I prefer Rob style. But yeah, yeah, and also yeah, the descriptions they are very scientific, but it feels like there's the vocabulary, the lexical field has a lot of specificities. It's in meters or in this or in that, so it looks objective. But when you think about it, um, it's not because it's objective in terms of dimensions that it gives you a more precise ideas, a more precise idea. I don't know if you, or maybe it's kind of too far-fetched idea, but I thought that sometimes it was so precise that even the fact that you could potentially recreate it was more. There was some irony behind that. You know what I mean? It's a sort of a hyperbole, an hyperbolic description, or um,
Well, I mean, I think the irony with it too is that on one hand he's describing things in a very specific, minute way, but everything resembles everything. Like, so we
yeah,
haven't
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah,
talked about like the plot of this novel, but I mean,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
there's like a
yeah.
soldier,
Can you
he's
talk
wandering
about
down
that?
the street,
Yeah,
and all like on these streets where all of the houses look like one another. So like there's this kind of contradiction in the fact that on one hand there's these very precise descriptions, but it's also really disorienting because everything looks like everything else. So it like it doesn't, the precision of the descriptions doesn't aid in like orienting yourself or like
yeah,
um or uh um yeah, there's like an irony between like the specificity of the descriptions and then just the fact that the way that the world is uh just full of like reflections and doubles and
yeah,
repetitions. um
yeah. I think that was amazing. When I started figuring out what was going on, because so the story is the story of a soldier who is on a mission to
like
bring a
deliver a
box.
package or some, or meet
Yeah.
somebody.
And what's funny is that he was all depicted a lot as a guy with a plotless story, And then he comes up with the typical plot of I don't know. There was I saw a video like that a few years ago from somebody called Stanton, a guy who worked at Pixar, and he had like a TED talk about how to write a story, and you have to have the magic box, or maybe it was J.J. Abrams or something. And the magic box is like the plot device where you got the character who has a magic box, and the viewer doesn't know what is in the magic box. So then it gets you going, you know.
It's like the
And
MacGuffin.
yeah, it's like a MacGuffin. And what I thought was really funny is that when you start the reading of the book, you don't know where you are. There's the description, there's a painting, so you understand that the story takes place. It's the story of the painting, basically, but it's very, I mean, it's very disorienting. I don't know. I mean, I felt really disoriented. I mean, your French level is really good, but I thought about you a couple of times because I had to reread like 5, 10 pages. I went back. I was like taking little notes, you know, trying to, like in the labyrinth with the fil d'Ariane, you know, like you have to uh, uh, probe your way back or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact word. And it was the same thing. So I was like trying to like hold on little clues, little words, and things like that. And And so by the time I figured out what was going on, so it was probably like page 50 or 60 or something like that, then you start to understand, and then it becomes enjoyable because you know that the moment you lived, the things that were described will be described again, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't know when it comes. And then when it comes, you look at it and then it goes somewhere else and um and so yeah, to go back to the story, it's the soldier who has on a mission to bring a box, and we don't really know if he's a deserter or not at first. I don't know if you had this impression.
Well, I'll
And
tell you what I thought later, but yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
I'll just finish on that. And then, because maybe I'm making a fool of myself. Maybe, you know, it was just a guy going to Starbucks and just going about his day, you know, just describing an IKEA frame, like a picture of the workers on the steel beam, you know,
Yeah.
in New York City. No, yeah, and the soldier is gets into like a place, a bar or something, and is greeted by a woman with a child, and he has to go to some place, and he doesn't know where the place is. So then the that woman's child just takes him on the street and leads him to the place. But he has trouble keeping track with the kid, so he gets lost in the way, sort of. And this is repeated countless times. I don't know how often, I mean, how many times, but yeah. That's my understanding of the of the plot.
Well, yeah. No, I think yeah, that is coherent. Um, but I do think like as you're because like initially, well, I'll tell you what I thought. Like, I mean, there's the idea of the labyrinth, which is kind of purgatorial, right? Like you're
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
like you
Yeah.
can't it, and he's like walking through these streets, and they're all identical, and he keeps coming across this like lamp post, and the snow's falling, and it seems like sometimes it's daytime, sometimes it's nighttime, like it's rather surreal. But
Yeah.
so he sees this kid. Oh, are you there, Ben? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm just putting on my jacket.
So he sees the kid. We don't really know who the kid is. He ends up at this apartment, the apartment of his mother, I think. And there's this like portrait on the wall of a soldier, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he's like not sure if it's the is it the father of the boy? Is it the husband of the woman? Part of me is thinking that like all of the possibilities of who this soldier could be are like playing out, like maybe he is dead and he is like returning to his wife, and that's like him on the wall. And then there's another later in the story, there's also a man who is like crippled,
Yeah.
who is living with the woman or next to the woman. And I'm like, is this the version where he comes back, but he's crippled? Or, like, are all these different, like, past and present scenarios, like, playing out simultaneously of, like, what could have happened?
Yeah.
Um, and I think, especially before the plot that you described becomes clear, I think all this, like, I think it is allowing us to imagine that all
Yeah.
these different
Absolutely.
possibilities, because there's something, like I said, kind of purgatorial about the idea of the labyrinth. And I do think that, yeah, part of me thought maybe he's like dead and he's like returning to, like his wife and child, and like maybe that picture is of him, or like there's this man,
Yeah.
maybe this is the soldier who's come back from war, and we find
Yeah.
out that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So it becomes kind of clearer the farther you get, and the possibilities become less numerous. But initially, at least, you're like allowed to imagine all these things. And I mean, on the level of the sentence and things, it's always jumping between like different tenses. Um, it is giving descriptions that are contradictory, like it's raining and it's not raining. The wind is like it's really windy and it's like peaceful. There's these kind of contradictory descriptions like within a same paragraph. Um, so you're thinking like are different times like occurring simultaneously. Um, so yeah, that was kind of my theory of it initially, that there's something that is
Yeah.
being conjured, I guess.
Yeah. So I don't remember. I think it's Jeanette who wrote that in his essay, the Vertige fixé. He said, I think I remember something about Robbe-Grillet using motifs just like in a piece of music, you know, and I think that if because in the forwards from the author, do you mind if I read it? Because it's interesting on two fronts. Because you talked about the purgatorial feature of the or purgatorial element. So the avertissement reads like this. Ce récit est une fiction, non un témoignage. Il décrit une réalité qui n'est pas forcément celle dont le lecteur a fait lui-même l'expérience. Ainsi, les fantassins de l'armée française ne portent-ils pas leur numéro matricule sur le col de la capote? De même, l'histoire récente d'Europe occidentale n'a-t-elle pas enregistré de batailles importantes à Reichenfels ou dans les environs? Il s'agit pourtant ici d'une réalité strictement matérielle, c'est-à-dire qu'elle ne prétend à aucune valeur allégorique. Le lecteur est donc invité à n'y voir que les choses, gestes, paroles, événements qui lui sont rapportés, sans chercher à leur donner ni plus ni moins de signification que dans sa propre vie, virgule, ou sa propre mort. So here, basically, he's telling us there's no allegorical value to that story, but at the same time, he says there's no more or less meaning than in the reader's own life or in his own death. So basically, he's playing he's playing with us from the get go, and I think getting into the labyrinth is also a reader's experience, trying to make sense, trying to focus, trying to um, to hold on onto each word, literally like groping your way about, and so trying to give its value, like its literal value to the text, so that you understand what goes on. But at the same time, the text is so disorienting that you can't help yourself, you know. Especially when it says sans chercher à donner ni plus ni moins de signification que dans sa propre vie. Um, but if you say there's no allegorical value, and you say that you have to look for meaning not more or less than you do in your own life. So basically, in your own life, it's not going to be allegorical or metaphorical, but you will sometimes be have to think in those terms, So I when I read that, I was like, okay, that's gonna be that's gonna play with that. That's gonna be the text is going to look at trying to disorient, to confuse, and to to mislead the its reader. And so that's, yeah, I felt exactly the same. I had the same readings as you when, like, in about the middle of the text, you think, okay, this soldier is the father of the kid, is the husband of the woman, or maybe not, or maybe this, or maybe that. And at the same time, also, uh, I thought about these words, and I was like, literally, what is happening is we have the story of a guy who comes back from war, and so potentially he is disoriented.
Like he's shell
So
shocked or something.
yeah. I was thinking about the shell shock term.
Um, I mean, I think the other thing is like uh, the other novels that I've read of his. I've read Les Gommes, which
Oh
is
yeah.
sort of like a parody of like Georges Simenon, like a
Oh
roman policier, and then Le Voyeur, which is about a guy who he's like a traveling salesman that goes to this island off of Brittany to sell watches, and you kind of get the sense progressively that he may be involved in like the rape murder of like a young girl on the island, but both of them have like a like a detective novel or like policier like expectations built into them, um, where you have these characters that are recognizable archetypes to a certain extent, and so you can kind of project those expectations onto the text. And with this one, I really didn't know what, like, I felt like he did something that wasn't like a parody of some, or like an intertextual game. Like, I think part of the reason I felt lost initially is because I didn't know what I was supposed, there was no like framework for what I was supposed to expect. There's just this guy in the middle of the street. He's like wandering. Um, and, in like Les Gommes, you would expect, okay, there's like a murder and a series of clues leading up to, a final reveal, like all these things the text can play with those expectations. But here I didn't even really know what expectations they were playing with, except that something more basic, like how many characters are like are there, is this person alive, is he like a character, are there like, is he a painting, or is he you know
Yeah.
so I think it was playing with something like more fundamental than like genre, like it felt just more um
Y- Yeah, I agree. At the same time, have you ever read any of Kafka's work?
le procès, or
The Procès,
the
the trial.
the trial, yeah,
Okay, because
and the metamorphosis, I guess, yeah.
I read The Castle, and that definitely reminded me a little bit of The Castle, and it reminded me of the confusion I felt when I read Kafka. A little bit. I'm trying to think about another author, but no, I think there was definitely a nightmarish feel to this one.
Yeah.
And we're describing a painting. It's a painting within a novel, and I think the experience I had was really pic pictorial, uh, whatever. Uh, because yeah, because there is I mean, all these descriptions. We're basically looking at a painting, and we're describing. There's some considerations. That yeah, do you mind if I read another extract? Um, so it's page 50 of my book. There's an element of, and something that I felt, you're right, was new, or maybe I'm not aware of this type of literature. It's it's the painting within a text, and also the fact that the importance of the image is not just in terms of having the viewer, I mean, having the reader uh, have a clear idea of what they're seeing, but it's more in terms of playing around with figures and playing around with the subject matter. Okay, so yes, okay, so I'm going to start. It's going to be a little bit long, but I'm gonna just shorten it real quick. So it starts at Le soldat lève la tête vers la façade grise aux rangées de fenêtres uniformes, sans balcon, soulignées d'un trait blanc au bas de chaque embrasure, pensant voir peut-être apparaître le gamin, quelque part derrière un carreau. Mais il sait bien. So here from the get-go we have, so that's why I'm going to cut short here and I'll keep reading. But here um, it's we have verbs like il pense, pensant voir, or mais il sait bien. Donc, so right away we're in the lexical field of epistemology, you know, of trying to knowing, trying to know, trying to make sense, trying to understand what is being seen. So that's why it's really a psychological. It's heavily psychological. You know, I don't know about his other books. Okay, but here we're definitely in the soldier's head. But we have to remember that the soldier is on the painting. So we're not in the soldier's head. We're actually in the character that is seeing a soldier. Anyway. Mais il sait bien que l'enfant à la pèlerine n'habite pas cette maison, puisqu'il l'a lui-même accompagné déjà jusque chez lui. À en juger par l'aspect des fenêtres, l'immeuble entier a l'air du reste inoccupé. Same thing. Here, the du reste, it's a little uh, uh, narratorial intrusion. This little du reste means, how would you translate that? Whatever or
Can you
something like that.
where's it? Can you read the sentence again? I'm sorry.
À en juger, so here again, à en juger, so we're still in the knowledge, the realm of knowledge. À en juger, par l'aspect des fenêtres, l'immeuble entier a l'air, du reste, inoccupé. So the aspect of the windows, um,
Yeah, it seems like it
the
looks
build,
like this, and besides it,
yeah.
uh,
Besides,
yeah.
yeah. I'll keep going. Les lourds rideaux rouges s'étendent sur toute la hauteur, du sol au plafond. La cloison qui leur fait face est garnie par la commode avec au-dessus le tableau. So here we go back to the painting. Okay. But we don't know where we are. Oh yeah, so now we're in the painting within the painting. L'enfant y est à sa place. But we don't know if it's the painting or it's really confusing. Assis à même le sol sur ses jambes repliées, on dirait qu'il veut se glisser tout à fait sous le banc. Pourtant, il continue d'observer vers l'avant de la scène, avec une attention dont témoigne, à défaut d'autre chose, la grande ouverture de ses yeux. Cet indice, il est vrai, n'est pas très sûr. Si l'artiste a considéré que la scène n'ouvrait sur rien, il n'y a vraiment rien dans son esprit sur le quatrième côté de cette salle rectangulaire, dont il n'a représenté que 3 murs. On peut dire que l'enfant a seulement les yeux dans le vide. Mais, dans ce cas, il n'était pas logique de choisir, pour le neutraliser ainsi, le seul des 4 côtés qui donne vraisemblablement sur quelque chose. So here we have consideration on how the painting was made, you know, on the conception. And so there is this aspect of what did the painter try to do? How is the painting made? What kind of aspect, what kind of question one can ask themselves when they are looking at the painting? And in the end, it doesn't even it's not really that important. But I think this kind of meandering thinking of how things are made, what they look like, what they're supposed to look like. It's kind of like it's a maze-like structure, you know, in the sense that everything looks the same, and we wonder why it's made like that. And in the end, there's no real answer, you know. There's no real answer why things are like that. And I think the answer is just that sometimes, you know, there is some sort of pleasure of just getting lost in the painting, you know, trying to ask ourselves those trivial questions. And so it gets us wondering, it, you know, it sets our minds in motion. Um, and I think that's one of the pleasure of looking at a painting, and that's one of the that's what he's trying to do here. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah. Um, well, because I think it all is also just part of like there are like maybe you would call it like metatextual kind of commentaries throughout, like
Mm,
deconstructing the representation. Like the first time the invalid appears, like the man whose leg is broken, he's referred to as like another character, like un personnage, like un nouveau personnage qui entre,
yeah.
you know. So there's this sense of you know, describing the painting not uh, as a thing that's constructed and that's an
Hmm.
illusion in some way, and then also when we go when we elaborate the narrative from the painting, there's also indications of the artificial nature of the narrative as well, that we're referring to the different people as characters, as you know, artificial creations. And so I think it has something to do also with I because I'm just like thinking over your idea of the pleasure. I just think um the I think we both get pleasure from reading this, but I don't I wonder if like they're just like is no pleasure like in the narrative itself, you know, like I wonder what uh like if the
You suffered during the reading.
I didn't personally suffer, but it's not a joyful text per se. I mean, there's um I even like hesitate to say something that there's something playful about it, even though I don't know what other word to describe, except well, maybe that idea of like vertigo, you know?
Yeah.
Like something almost like yeah, like I don't know if I felt pleasure. I mean, like I did, like I enjoyed it, but it is more of a sense of like kind of like yeah, like vertigo, like not knowing where to position yourself or like to so it was very disconcerting, I'd say,
Yeah.
in addition to being pleasurable. Um
No, yeah, yeah, it's disconcerting, but no, I get what you mean because in the beginning, and also that's why I didn't want to read him for so many years because I thought all of this would be like kind of a annoying bullshit
yeah.
kind of thing. But at the same time, I mean, I was really amazed at at the book ability to get us lost in it and to pick us up and to show us how it's getting us lost, you know. So several times I slowed down, I grabbed the pen, and I read the pages, and I was jotting down little things. And the slower I went, the the better it felt, you know. At some point, then you know I wanted to finish the book, so I couldn't read like a page a day or something. And sometimes I was really tired at night when I came back from work or something. So, but overall, no, yeah, there was a sensation after the first couple of times where you don't really know what's going on, that when you start seeing the soldier again or the kid again or that kind of thing where you're like, okay, I have to hold on to my pants and I have to look at it like as clear as possible. And like he said in the forwards, just look at the text very carefully. And then you see all those descriptions, those intricate sentences, those uh, there's a lot of apositional clauses and interventions from the author, and that's something that I really enjoyed reading because I always felt it was cold and objective. That's the idea. That's the idea I had. And actually, when you read it, it's always hesitating. The narrator's voice is hesitant or sometimes confident, but you understand that you have to be careful because you don't know what the follow-up will be to what you're reading. So so in that way, I thought it was pleasurable. But of course, it's not an easy read, and if people are tired and they want to read the book, then I would advise to to not do it. You have to be clear-headed
Yeah, I
or
agree.
not sleepy. Otherwise, you can go to bed really quickly. That happened to me a couple of times when I read.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe I can't find the passage I was looking for, but I think maybe we should just read like the first paragraph because uh I think it is I don't know, it represents well, I think the experience of reading, especially the first part of the novel in which
That's the first paragraph of the book.
yeah, of the book.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I'll get it.
So I'll just read it here.
Yeah.
Ok. Je suis seul ici, maintenant bien à l'abri. Dehors, il pleut. Dehors, on marche sous la pluie en courbant la tête, s'abritant les yeux d'une main, tout en regardant quand même devant soi, à quelques mètres devant soi, quelques mètres d'asphalte mouillé. Dehors, il fait froid, le vent souffle entre les branches noires dénudées, le vent souffle dans les feuilles entraînant les rameaux entiers dans un balancement qui projette son ombre sur le crépi blanc des murs. Dehors, il y a du soleil, il n'y a pas un arbre ni un arbuste pour donner de l'ombre. Et l'on marche en plein soleil, s'abritant les yeux d'une main tout en regardant devant soi, à quelques mètres seulement devant soi, quelques mètres d'asphalte poussiéreux, où le vent dessine des parallèles, des fourches, des spirales. So, I think one of the things that is surprising to me, I guess, so just like in this paragraph, there are a number of just like, I don't know, it seems obvious, but it's something maybe if you're not paying attention, like are not obvious, but there's just these like contradictions, all over the place. Like it's raining, but the asphalt is wet, and then later it's dusty, and um,
Yeah.
it's raining, but it's also sunny. There's like trees, and then there's not trees. So I I
Yeah.
I think the thing that makes it hard for me. So like after the first part of the book, suddenly the narrative kind of breaks off, and we start describing this painting. And for me, it's like hard to think like, is the perspective that is looking on this painting in itself coherent? Because I think that's kind of the mirror thing where this painting is like a something that's constructed, and then so is the narrator's like position. So it's this kind of, yeah, I like a kind of this vertiginous thing where we're kind of forced by the narrative to take a to place ourselves to trust the narrator and then to, you know, uh uh think of him as this coherent thing, even though the way he describes the world is contradictory. And um so I just think it's constantly negating like every position it's asking us to take in like a different way, or like reflecting it or making it convoluted. um so I think that's part of the labyrinth effect,
Yeah.
um where there's these this kind of like emboîtement, or like, kind of like Russian doll effect of like these different representations within a representation, and then kind of constantly playing with the legitimacy of each level in a different way. So it makes it hard to know where to position yourself. Even though at the end, like if you jump from the first page to the last page, the end of the novel seems like super coherent. Like it's like it like summarizes the whole situation, and um, it talks about like what happens to all the characters sort of in a way. And so it is yeah, it is playful and almost comical, I guess, when you kind of think about it later. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a book that needs a couple of rereads, and it even made me want to reconsider Comedy Classic, by Marin Jai,
oh yeah, yeah,
because I think maybe I read it a little too fast. But at the same time, I feel that, uh, I mean, I don't think it's too a little too much to say that, but I mean, it's too out of place to say that. But I think he manages the effect way. He has more more uh, yeah, narratorial. Let's just say that, yeah, this book is better at what it's doing than what NJ's book is better at what it was doing. But it's both books were kind of confusing and probably need to be reread so that you can really fully enjoy. I mean, fully enjoy your experience. Not in the sense that you will understand or catch everything, because you know what you just said about the incoherence. I didn't catch it. However, on the second reading, there is I caught like I don't know what it is, whatever. I caught something that I was like, oh yeah, yeah, that looks like a maze. That's definitely a maze-like description, and so by rereading or by paying attention, you understand the full extent of what you're missing and what you're understanding. So I think that's part of the enjoyment, is to grab something and be like, oh yeah, that's I feel the confusion and I feel good with the confusion, because there's little elements that you can make sense of, and other elements that you don't know, and this time you didn't catch it, and maybe you'll catch it another time, or maybe never. And that, I think, is what a maze is like. It's you go. I remember when I was a kid, I used to love those games. Like finding your way around.
yeah,
Then
yeah.
you try, you go, and then, oh, it's a dead end, and then you come back, and then this, and then that, and so I thought this was really, really. It's also really interesting because when you think about it, it's a soldier's experience. It's written. I think the book was written. I forgot, but it's probably like in the 60s or like
I think it was
50s.
59.
Yeah. So it's after the Second World War, and maybe around the time of decolonial wars. So we're talking about the experience of a soldier who's feeling disoriented. For the soldier, from the soldier perspective, it's definitely not a pleasurable experience. So having those two levels intricate
Like a
is intricate.
realist, like a realist perspective, like where this is the representation of like a soldier's psychological trauma coming back from the war
Yeah,
or something. Yeah.
yeah,
Versus like something playful and like metatextual and like,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but
No, no, it's fine. That was my point.
well, it did make me think the reason I actually didn't look at the year of the novel either, but I was especially I was thinking of like Waiting for Godot. I don't know if you've read that. The
I
En
read it.
attendant Godot, the
Yeah. Thanks for the translation.
well, I I assume I know you know, but um
Don't insult my English, Alex.
not insulting your uh but it has multiple titles is why I'm saying.
Yeah.
So no, but
Yeah,
there's
I
because
read it,
I mean
but a while
there's
ago.
this repeated scene like in this novel, this man waiting by the lamppost and this kid that
Yeah.
keeps coming back multiple
Oh,
times.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And I mean, like at the end of each of the two acts of Waiting for Godot, there's this like, there's the two that are waiting at this tree, and then this kid arrives to tell them that Godot like wants you to wait, you know,
Yeah.
or he's not available, like maybe try again tomorrow. And so yeah, each kind of act is punctuated by the return of this like kid. And so I'm sure there's some sort of you know, an intentional like echo, especially, with like
Hmm.
the lamppost and the tree and the kid and the uh
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think there is definitely something like yeah, some sort of intertextual play there. And I mean there's kind of an absurdist like element to it, but it's not like despairing either, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think also there's this intertext or this interplay. It didn't read like an absurdist book, you know.
No.
It didn't read like a Bleak or something like that. It read, and well, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it read like on the one hand there's the psychological experience, and on the other hand there's the cold experimenting or joke of a scientific mind almost, you know.
Well, there's like
Uh,
fascination
yeah.
in it. Or I don't know, that's kind of what I sense, like some fascination with
Mm,
sight or the mind or something. Whereas
yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah,
absurdist vision is more like kind of detached, where this is
yeah,
feels like more
mystical or
interior or something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, uh, would you mind if I read a bit from a different text? Because yeah, I think we are at like 58 minutes.
Like another not
It's
dans le labyrinthe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's outside of the labyrinth. So in this edition, there are a few texts, and one of them is called le dans les couloirs du métropolitain.
Is it fiction?
I don't know what it is. It's a description. It's the best description of an escalator.
A painting
The best.
of an escalator? No.
Yeah. It's
No,
the
I'm kidding.
painting of an escalator who went to war and doesn't know.
You're
Um,
still in the labyrinth, but
yes. So, l'escalier mécanique. Première partie. Un groupe immobile, tout en bas du long escalier gris-fer, dont les marches l'une après l'autre affleurent, au niveau de la plateforme d'arrivée, et disparaissent une à une dans un bruit de machinerie bien huilée, avec une régularité pourtant pesante, et saccadée en même temps, qui donne l'impression d'assez grande vitesse à cet endroit, où les marches disparaissent l'une après l'autre sous la surface horizontale, mais qui semble au contraire d'une lenteur extrême. Ayant d'ailleurs perdu toute brusquerie pour le regard qui, descendant la série des degrés successifs, retrouve tout en bas du long escalier rectiligne, comme à la même place, le même groupe, dont la posture n'a pas varié d'une ligne. Un groupe immobile, debout sur les dernières marches, qui vient à peine de quitter la plateforme de départ. C'est figé aussitôt pour la durée du parcours mécanique. C'est arrêté tout d'un coup, en pleine agitation, en pleine hâte, comme si le fait de mettre les pieds sur les marches mouvantes avait soudain paralysé les corps, l'un après l'autre, dans des poses à la fois détendues et rigides, en suspens, marquant la halte provisoire au milieu d'une course interrompue, tandis que l'escalier entier poursuit sa montée, s'élève avec régularité d'un mouvement uniforme, rectiligne, lent, presque insensible, oblique par rapport aux corps verticaux. So that was one sentence. And so it's about a group who step on an escalator and they go down. And yeah. And so then, yeah, it's a trip on an escalator. And just by by the syntax, by the adjectives, by the verbs, I don't know, it is able to, like we said before, he has a very specific, detailed description of what's going on, but it's so detailed that it's a bit dizzying. There's a lot of there's a lot of subordinate clauses, apositional clauses, so you're disorienting. You don't know what you're looking at, and at the same time, it forces you to look even further, even closer, and and so it makes you realize that you're watching just a bunch of people on an escalator. But at the same time, there's this weird, when you look at it like this, it's automatic and it's kind of fascinating because the stairs are flat and then they form angles.
Yeah,
There's something a little weird about escalators. And I didn't know I felt that about escalators before reading this this paragraph.
that well, I'm glad you're discovering yourself, Ben.
Yeah. Think I have a
Well,
thing for escalators.
um, well, it does make me think. I'd have to. It seems to me I'd have to go back into the text. I can't remember, but there's something um uh like the idea of a machine is like similar to the way I'm just thinking of his subject because it seems like it could be uh an observation of like the real world, but I'd have to think like the fascination like with something like mechanical like that kind of has to do or and like deconstructing it in a way like visually has something similar
Yeah.
to do with like deconstructing narrative conventions or like narrative or like literary genres or something. Like they're all like types of machines or something.
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so there's probably some through like thematic echo or like through line like um with what he's doing in general. And I think almost like I don't know, like I like did you find this book funny or that description funny? Because I think there's also
I
something
think so.
about like unveiling the mechanicity of life or something that has something like comic about it, or that's like the um
Oh yeah, I
Bergson's
think you're right.
theory of laughter, which is like le mécanique plaqué sur le vivant.
Oh,
um
who said that?
Henri
Bergson?
Bergson. Yeah, that's what that for him. That's what the comic is or comedy is. It's
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
le mécanique plaqué sur le vivant.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something, yeah, there's some fascination like with mechanics, and which I mean, obviously Bergson isn't just talking about like literal machines only, but
Machines, yeah, yeah.
I do think there's something comical. Um,
Yeah, I think yeah, absolutely. In the sense that especially, when I think here, even for the escalator, it would be the other way around. It's not mechanics applied to life. It's life applied to mechanics. It's describing an escalator as a living being almost. And so this kind of reversal of perspective, this shifting of perspective, I think even in general, the shift in perspective always brings about some sort of an element of comedy, because you realize, or one realizes, that whatever they're looking at, there's something afoot, or something amiss, or something like that. I don't remember. There's something going on there. Whereas in tragedy, or in drama, you need the people to be engaged, to consider what they're looking at as as a as whole. I don't know if it makes sense, or with as little distance as possible. Like
Yeah,
if you start seeing the seams, or if you start considering that, yeah, it's fiction, and you look at a crime, and maybe, like, I don't know. Whereas, yeah, when there's an element, when there's some distance introduced, and that's definitely, I think, what Robbe-Grillet is doing a lot, just with the verbs of knowledge, not sure what he's looking at, and at the same time being so specific. There's a paradox there, some kind of contradiction in the terms, which, like, you said in the description at the beginning, you read it's raining outside, and then two lines after you're like, it's sunny outside.
yeah,
And you're like, okay, I don't understand. It doesn't make sense.
yeah. Yeah, I think there's also something to, because I mean, another way I think that, the comic and the tragic are like distinguished is like the comic is about specifics, like it's about like it's about the everyday, like the details of like
Hmm.
living and the particulars, and then the tragic is like like the big emotions, and
Yeah.
often people who are like, at least classically, kings and princesses, like things that are unreal but seem to like represent the most sublime
Yeah.
elements of life, whereas the comic has to do with very precise details. And so, yeah, I think there is like some weird, or like in Dans les Labyrinthes, yeah, this like play with like the comic and the tragic, in the sense that it is
Yeah.
on one
Yeah.
hand
Yeah.
like very specific, but the specific elements of it are kind of like negated by the fact, by these like repetitions, which kind of negate the specificity in a way, where it's like it's
Yeah.
very specific, but it's also repeated, and like it can be undone, and like yeah, so I don't know.
Absolutely. And there's definitely dark moments in the book, tragic moments.
Yeah,
Um, in the relationship, when the soldier realizes that, at some point, it sounds like the soldier realizes that he's going through the same things. He realizes that something's wrong with him, or with the reality that surrounds him. The woman he meets, the relationship with her and um, the crippled guy, uh, is also strange. And the image of the kid on the street, the kid. There's something a little bit melancholic about the kid. I don't know.
well, I think like what we were talking about earlier, I mean, there is like a sense that, I don't know, something, yeah, like purgatorial, or like this guy is
Yeah,
maybe dead, or like traumatized, or like something, like there's all these kind of like troubling things that you can project onto it, but it seems, yeah, pretty like negative parts of it.
what?
Oh, just that, yeah, I'm agreeing with you that it
Yeah,
is, it supports some sort of like dark emotions, I guess.
yeah, it's bleak. Right
Um,
now, I'm teaching my students. We're in a chapter about Gothic fiction,
mm,
I started that this year. So yeah, this book is I think it's has some gothic themes. It's not very clear, but yeah, the idea of roaming, that's what it does really. Just roaming on the streets.
What I mean, I think there is a difference between like the fantastic and the gothic, but I mean, is there like an element like because I know like the fantastic anyway, it's like indecidability between like a logical and
Yeah.
supernatural explanation. I don't know if that's, if that is connects with the gothic, but for me, there's something kind of similar in this novel where it's like there's either uh an explanation or there's not. Like it is
Yeah.
either like coherent, like it's hesitating between like coherency and like not, I don't know. But
Yeah, that's why
maybe
in
that.
the end. No, yeah. Sorry, I don't want to
No, no,
cut
no,
you.
go ahead. I trailed off.
No, it's just in the end, you're right. There's a shift in tone, and then there's a lot of things that are explained. And at first, I was taken aback by that. I thought, I thought the mood and the atmosphere. I was really taken into this, and I didn't quite understand why there was this tonal shift, and all of a sudden everything was made clear. And in Jeanette's essay, he's talking about that a little bit. He says, I think it's related to that idea of a music piece. There's an
Okay.
introduction, then there's different motifs that are played that come back and they're played differently. And in the end, there's the outro, the conclusion where everything goes back to normal. And then, so yeah, in a way that helped me um, make sense of that and be more satisfied about what I had read. Mm. So yeah, this book is not entirely confusing. The last 50 pages are crystal clear.
Yeah. Um,
Right.
so do you have an idea of
Yeah.
what we should read for next time? Unless you have anything
Yeah, I
else to
do.
say. Okay.
No, I don't have anything else to say. Yeah, I do. I want to read. There's a book that is called Cartoons. It's a contemporary book. The guy who wrote it is called Kit Sculter, something like that. I think he's an American who lives in Mexico. And I heard about this book on YouTube and I got a copy of it. And I read the forwards or the preface or something like that. And it's interesting.
How do you spell the guy's last name?
So, Schulter.
Cool.
Does it is it intriguing enough?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is
It
consistent
was
with them.
it, it was either this or Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf.
Okay. I'm good with
But
this.
that will be I think my next suggestion. Do you have is there a book you want to read after
Uh,
this after the cartoons?
Um,
Or maybe you don't know.
I feel like um I have a list somewhere, not near the computer. Um, Let me think about it. We can both
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah. I don't
I'm
know.
actually right now I'm reading the Idiot,
Oh, by Dostoevsky?
yeah.
Oh, how do you like that? I bought it like a year or two ago and never got around to reading that.
Yeah, I think I read Crime and Punishment like a decade ago. and I wanted to read this one because it comes up a lot in like Bakhtin, which is a a theorist that I'm looking at, and he talks about the carnivalesque elements and uh the basically like what is a novel, and for him like Dostoevsky is like the pinnacle of like what a novel is and can be. And there are the idiot is sort of like he's not exactly like, it's not at all like a Don Quixote, but he's someone who is he's a character who is abnormal but also like sublime in some way, kind of like a Jesus figure, almost like a Jesus slash Don Quixote kind of figure. So there's something like that is coherent like with what I'm working on, this kind of this idea of like the clown or the fool, um that comes up. So I that's like why I'm looking at it. But it's also, I don't know, I always think, or at least in English, I don't know, like Dostoevsky has always talked about oh, reading Crime and Punishment, or like War and Peace, which is Tolstoy, but it's that you're like punishing
It's
yourself in some
Russian.
way or like doing something awful. But it's actually, I don't know, they're really like entertaining, like page turners.
Okay.
So it's not like a punishment to inflict either of those
It's not a
authors on
crime.
yourself.
It's not a crime either.
No,
And you're not
no,
an idiot for doing
no,
it.
no. But I'll try
Yeah,
to get a
okay.
hold
So
of cartoons.
yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can find that at the library, or uh, or you can get a copy of it because the guy is alive. So um yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you want to sign off?
Yeah, here I'll stop the recording. Okay, bye. Recording.